All right, Mr. Chair, you are now live.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our monthly meeting of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes from our December meeting. Those were shared with you by email. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes shall stand approved by common consent. In line with our usual policy, when we have a guest speaker, I would like the commission's indulgence to flip the agenda and go immediately to the presentation that the Reverend Marguerite Morris is going to be providing to us. But in I guess a short introduction to that, I would just mention this, that this issue involves a provision of the police reform bills package that passed the General Assembly last year. The specific law involved here is HB 670, which mandates that each county in Maryland shall establish a police accountability board. You'll recall that I had sent you an email saying that I had been invited as commission chair to take part in a program that was set up by County Executive Pittman for the purpose of briefing us on it and also taking our thoughts and opinions. I attended that. I sent everybody an email summarizing it. Then when the PowerPoint was completed by the staff of the county executive, I sent that to you as well as the legislation, which the county executive is going to be proposing to county council. I only say this in terms of background because we've had one other request which we have received from a coalition group. Basically, it's called the Police Accountability Board Coalition, and it's seeking the support of the commission for its recommendations. And this coalition consists of the ACLU of Maryland, the NAACP, the Caucus of African American Leaders, and an organization called Community Activity Seeking Transparency. I'm very pleased that the Reverend Morris can join us this evening, and I'm going to turn to her now and ask her to share the recommendations that the coalition that she and others are part of are making to the commission tonight, and that will enable us to act on them. So, Reverend Morris, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. You've made my job easy. That's half my slide presentation tonight. You've all read the background. So I want to know, can I share my screen? Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm a little bit new at this, but let me see if I can do that. Oh, okay, there it is. So since you all are pretty much, it sounds like you're up on this already. Hold on, I guess I got to go to slideshow. Then I can go through this rather quickly and perhaps even skip a few slides. But this Police Accountability Board is very important across the state of Maryland, as most of you already know. I think every county is trying to find some sort of medium where it will not just be reviewing, but they'll have some sort of powers to increase police accountability and transparency. As many of you know, the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights that existed in Maryland was one of the strongest in the country, and it severely limited our abilities to give true, meaningful oversight to our police department. We jockeyed for quite a while with civilian review boards, so if you know anything about that as well, the Police Accountability Board is pretty much just a takeoff of that, except what the people were asking for, we're not seeing. So I'll try to go through this quickly. And again, I'm Reverend Marguerite Moores. And thank you for having us. I don't know how much of this I need to get into. I think all of you know about this. It's the Act of 2021. They struck down the LEOBOR, Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, as you can see here. And I'm just going to flip on through this. If there's something that you have a question, because I don't want to repeat what I think, if you've reviewed the information, most of you know. This is, again, very important across the state of Maryland. Before this came out, there were only 2 counties that had any meaningful or partially meaningful oversight of the police. That was Prince George County and Baltimore City. And what this bill has done, actually the new law has done, has almost been to pull the rug out from under those already in place. And right now we're facing a crisis of almost every really transparent and oversight measure possibly being, kind of done away with. So again, police accountability boards, it's generated to meet at least quarterly with the heads of law enforcement. They're going to appoint civilian members to several committees, the charging committee and the trial board. You already know they'll receive complaints by members of the public and issue quarterly reports, submit a yearly report. And the county council is responsible for establishing the PAB membership, budget, and staff, as well as the county and appointing the chair and establishing the keeping of procedures. There is an administrative charging committee, and each county will have one. The local Anne Arundel County, it will have the chair of the PAB, 2 civilian members, from the PAB, and 2 civilians appointed by the CEO of the county. There's also a statewide ACC with 3 civilians, and I won't bother to go over that, but just know that there's also a statewide committee as well. Now, the Administrative Charging Committee, first there's a Police Accountability Committee, and then it goes to the Administrative Charging Committee, and then it goes to the Trial Board. You're going to see a chart that shows you how it will move through those 3 entities. Just right here, we're talking about responsibilities of each, reviewing and reviewing the findings of investigations, determining whether or not to charge the police officers, and if the officer is charged, recommending disciplinary action or discipline according to what's called a disciplinary matrix. Also review body camera footage and issue a written opinion. The trial board is required to review and decide cases based on the facts of the case. This is where it's now moved. I've already gone 3 stages already. Police Accountability Board, the charging committee, and now we're already to the trial board. So the trial board is where if the officer does not accept discipline or the decision, say they charge the officer, they decide to charge the officer, recommend discipline, the officer has the right to appeal to a trial board. The trial board is made up of 3 entities. One, the administrative law judge, and this is very important. I'll pause here for a moment because I know I just went through those first 5 slides. Important to our community is also this trial board, because the county executive will have the authority to appoint judges to that trial board. So you will have somewhat of an administrative or retired judge, a police officer of equal ranking to the officer being charged, and then a civilian that is not part of the ACC or the PAB. So one of the asks that you're going to see that we're asking is that with the formation, and you may already know this, with the formation of the PAB, there is certain vetting that will go on with the members. They will be invited, a person will be invited to apply or invited by some mechanism by the county. Then they have to be, I think, confirmed. But the difference between the members of the PAB being confirmed and this judge is that there's no vetting. So one of the things that we are asking, we feel is very critical, is that ALJ be vetted. Now, again, we already went through this. This is just showing you a flow of how things would move through. The Police Accountability Board has the power, will receive complaints. They, in turn, have 3 days to take their complaints and send them to the law enforcement agency, which then investigates the complaints, or citizens can go right to the law enforcement agency and make a complaint. That sounds all fine, except what you have is you have the Police Accountability Board that doesn't have the right to investigate at all. And they're sending a complaint to the police, the law enforcement agency, which is now going to investigate themselves. And it goes over to the ACC committee, which again has very limited powers. There's no, what you've seen from county executive is the bill that they put out gives no power to the committee to actually launch its own investigation. And through the years, what Baltimore City has been able to do in Prince George County, or at least Baltimore City to some degree, is to at least launch their own investigation. Because if you ask many persons, and we won't get into that because we're going to be 10 other meetings, you know, there's been a problem, unfortunately, in our history with things not being quite accurate. So we need our police department, and we're not, and none of us are anti-police. We're all, some of us are anti-bad police. So this is what this is about. And you all know the stories. You've seen it across our country. I'm not saying anything new to you, but what we need is transparency. And I want to back up a little bit in case you all didn't know this. Previously, when you make a complaint to the police department, if you walked in and you made a complaint in Anne Arundel County, that complaint then became a human resources issue. So if Mr. Michael walked in and said, I want to make a complaint about Officer Byrd, right? When you walk out, you know, you're not entitled to any other information, not even necessarily the resolution of your complaint. That's the way it was. And that's what we've been kind of struggling against for several years. Human resources, confidential. We can't tell you, Mr. Michael, what we did with your complaint. We can't tell you, Mr. Michael, if we charged that officer. So this is the kind of the thing that we have been struggling through as a state. And so now we have this Police Accountability Board, HB 670, that's supposed to fix all of that. But unfortunately, I think my personal opinion is that it's going to present a few more problems than counted on, and they may go to some sort of amendments or jockeying of that in the future with this. So you already know about the act. I'll go through that one. Some of the things that are necessary for effective oversight is the budget. And we've done several presentations to county council persons and other persons, and there has been somewhat confusion about the budget. One county person said $60,000. And I thought that was funny because if I had my way, we'd probably need $600,000. And if you might ask me, well, why do you need money in your budget? Because if we have an effective police accountability board, then it would have the right to investigate, and do its own independent investigations. It doesn't mean that the board members do it, but you hire the staff, a staff of qualified persons with the legal backgrounds, the legal degrees, or whatever that is that's needed to do proper investigations of those matters. And that's where budgeting comes in. And independent, because the board needs independence, you need the right to hire your own staff to do those investigations. Because right now, what you're going to see, and if you already don't know it, we have 5 police departments in the county that this board, this newly formed board that's coming, will have oversight of. So for us to properly represent and be transparent, we need a way to look into what's presented before us. So again, oversight executive, supervisory investigators, policy analysts, administrative support staff. That's what a truly effective police transparency and accountability would look like. Funding also would provide for operations, again, investigations, technology, outreach and communications, data collection, storage, analysis, and software. Those are all expensive things. Maybe not expensive from the aspect of actually just operating, but more than probably some are seeing that would be needed. And I want to ask this question. I know you hear a lot about police accountability, about police accountability, and Reverend Morris gets in trouble with this. And I'm going to ask this question. How many of us, if we were charged with investigating our own selves? That's probably a moral question. I don't know. We're investigating ourselves, or we're investigating our own household, say with our sons and daughters in it. I mean, it'd be really difficult to be totally transparent. And so that's what we need. Independence is what we've been asking for. So again, membership background. Membership varies across the county, across the country, and I'm saying it's a little bit background. And so what we need in Anne Arundel County is membership that reflects the demographics of those most impacted by encounters with police. Now we say that because, and I'll take a child, just take a child for instance, a child's perspective on police, if that child is brought up in a good, in say a different home, I won't say a good or bad home because that has nothing to do with finances, but if it's brought up in a home where it has a different mentality, I'll say that, whether it's black, brown, red, or orange child, if that child's brought up in certain dynamic, it has a different mentality as opposed to a child that's brought up in a more troubled area. They're going to view things different, they're affected differently. And I want to say this, and I hope she doesn't mind, but I'm going to move on. But in one community in Annapolis, I see Judge Claudia is on here. In one community in Annapolis, there were 4 or 5 individuals that were stopped in that same community for some sort of violation or alleged, we want to stop you and see what you're up to. Let me tell you the names of those 5 different individuals. Maybe it's 4, I can't count. Alderperson Juan Gay, Judge Claudia Barber, Amy Cruz, and Will Rowell. Well, that's 4. I couldn't count the 5. In the same community, they were stopped for various reasons in the same. So that's the kind of thing that we talk about in communities more impacted than other communities. The mentality and the experiences that they have are quite different. So we have to be aware of that as they put this board out. Now, I want to also say this. When you hear about this board, if you haven't noticed, there's a difference between voting and non-voting members. If we had the board that we would love to have, and we'll use Baltimore City, for example. Baltimore City's voting members, and they have the right to investigate. The voting members have access to the investigation materials, confidentiality, et cetera, et cetera. Non-voting members are there for in an advisory capacity. They do not have access to the confidential information that a police accountability board, if it had investigative powers, would do. And I say that because when you see what we're asking for, you'll see that we have the ACLU on there as non-voting, the NAACP possibly as non-voting. You'll see different entities, including the police department, on there as non-voting members. But they're looked at as resources for information or advisory purposes. And that's different from voting members. So the county's current proposal is proposing 9 voting members, and one of the 9, I hope I have this right, is from the Annapolis City. It's an Annapolis City resident. But then the problem, if you haven't noticed, with the proposal the county has put out, is it doesn't list any of the entities that I just mentioned. On the non-voting side, it has the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Director in Human Resources. I probably said everything all backwards. The Chief of Police or a designee, the Annapolis Chief of Police or a designee, the Anne Arundel County Chief of Police or designee, the Sheriff or designee. That I find, and you may find if you haven't already caught it, might be very intimidating to be discussing inappropriate behaviors with police. So here we are, and I'm almost through my presentation here. So what we've done is we've done a chart of comparisons, and I want to go through that. It's about 3 pages, but it's going to summarize what the county has proposed, what we're asking, and possibly answer any questions you might have. What they're proposing, and when we did this chart, is that board duties, Police Accountability Board, we asked them for, this is what we're proposing. We asked for subpoena power, paid investigators to effectively review complaints. What we got was the board shall receive complaints of police misconduct from members of the public. The complaints of police misconduct filed with the board shall be forwarded to the appropriate law enforcement agency within 3 days after receipt by the board. Now, let me throw this out there to you, and I thank you so much for your patience. I gotta throw this in. It took me 9 years in the death of my daughter to be heard by an independent, we're gonna say an administrative law judge. 9 years, 9 years, 9 years just to be heard. Took the governor's intervening for me to be heard. And in 2021, that judge issued a 58-page opinion that not only were the Anne Arundel County Police in error, but the medical examiner for the state of Maryland was in error. This is 9 years after her death. And through all of that, what was missing was a police accountability board or civilian review board, because all we wanted to do was to have an independent agency, organizational person hear both sides of the story and issue an opinion. Okay, so that's case in point. So we'll go on from there. I'm sorry, let me go back one. So membership. We've already talked about the membership. I think you all get that. We were proposing that they have the seven districts of Anne Arundel County be represented. And in addition to that, 5 members representing the NAACP, Caucus, United Black Clergy, Community Advocacy Seeking Transparency, and CASA. And there is legislation in Anne Arundel County that does name organizations. In the one that the county is proposing, they do not name any organizations. They also have an extended list of membership requirements, or rather they're asking for people with this background. Now, this is not problematic except for sometimes persons that are impacted kind of know what's broken with the system a little more. And so you can see this list for yourselves, and this may leave out key persons. So there's still some work to do with those that the experience and background that they're asking for. Now I'm going to throw this out there as well. It's not really in the PowerPoint, but it's in the chart. Let me go back to the chart. One of the things they said also was that they would exclude certain persons that had trouble with the police. And I know that's appropriate in some areas, but if I can find, let me try to go forward one more. I think we've already gone over this. Here in the last page of the chart, it says those theft, dishonesty, fraud, or another crime of moral turpitude. Y'all gonna get Reverend more specific. But I just want to say there are citizens in our communities that have had trouble with the law and through the years have rebuilt their lives, are high level or whatever experienced, educated professionals in our communities. And this would absolutely exclude them.
Reverend Morris, could you go back to the section you had on membership? You had that, you were comparing it. Do you have that? Could you go back? It's a couple slides back there. Could you just let that stay just for a couple of minutes, because I'm trying to, is there anything that's above there on membership?
There's the first page, and I want to say this too. Thank you for taking me back to that page. This was some of the.
No, that wasn't it. It was, there you go. That's what I was looking at right there.
And what I wanted to say, when we get to the next slide, I wanted to expound on that a little bit more. So in essence, what the board is giving people is giving them zero investigative power, zero subpoena powers. It's not inclusive of certain organizations. And the thing that's problematic is that you're going to see that the board does not exclude the appointing of retired police as voting members. We now realize that that could absolutely be problematic, because we won't have always our favorite, or we don't know who's going to be county executive in the years and years down the road, but certainly one could stack that with police themselves in our community, because it prohibits active duty police from being appointed to the voting side, but it doesn't prohibit retired police officers from being appointed to the voting side. So that leaves so much room for I don't know, ambiguities or the stacking of the deck. And hear what I'm saying, and I know many of you already know this. The Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights was one of the strongest in the country. So right now it's an open playing field, and the police departments across the state of Maryland, of course, they want to keep that strength, and they don't want this thing, they don't want certain things in this bill. And I believe that they're working extremely hard through all of their channels to make sure that we don't get these rights. We're part of a coalition, a bigger coalition of 50 or 60 organizations across the state of Maryland. And every county, I believe right now, just about every county in Maryland is jockeying for the same thing, to get some sort of teeth in this police accountability bill. But you still, I can provide you with the PowerPoint if you'd like. Would that help?
Yeah, I think well, what I'm going to be doing just a very fast summary of some of what your requests are for the commission. That's why I'm sort of taking notes here. Can you go down the next slide after membership here? I'm looking at, nope, I think it's one that had non-voting members in it. There you go. Okay.
Oh, okay, great. I'm glad I got that for you.
Okay.
And in addition, as you can see that I've said, on the non-voting side, with it being top heavy of police only, I think that could be intimidating to little old people, you know, like myself and others that want to have robust, actual conversations. And I think that we would be intimidated. We're sitting there with 2 or 3 police chiefs. That might be intimidating to some people. I just think it's problematic and a conflict of interest. So they have put in there, they say to the extent practicable, that the voting membership of the Police Accountability will reflect the racial, gender, and cultural diversity of the county. So we do appreciate that. And we also ask about the ability to hire independent counsel. And actually, they've not specifically addressed that, but it doesn't appear to prohibit it. And Judge Carter could probably answer that a little better at some other time. Can I go on now?
Let me just.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Just want to make sure I wasn't holding you up. I'm good.
Okay, let me just do one other thing here.
Absolutely. Please take your time.
Because I say I'm going to summarize this conclusion.
Yes, sir. So again, this is extremely important to the citizens across Maryland. I cannot I can't even find the words to explain how important, because we can't wait until we get another, George Floyd or Tyreek Hudson or whatever it is. These individuals, I'm calling names, they weren't necessarily deceased because of police misconduct, and some were. But you don't want to, what I'm saying to the audience here is that we don't want a crisis to come up to find out how weak this is. And that's what's going to happen. And that's exactly, we don't want that to happen. Let's make it strong. Let's make it transparent. Let's make it, make those accountable that need to be held accountable. And there shouldn't be any reason for us to deny the citizens of Anne Arundel County and any other county that. We're all doing everything above board. But we know that many organizations, and again, we're not anti-police, just some have been problematic, and we need to do everything that we can to bring that transparency and light as much as possible to potential problems or conflicts of interest down the road. And that's what this is about. I'd be happy to try to answer questions you might have. And as far as the organizations, there are 26 of us, and I'm going to tell you who those other organizations are.
Okay, let me see if I can summarize what I see here as what your recommendations are in terms of supplementing and expanding on the proposal that's coming to you from the county executive. I've copied down 3 broad areas. One deals with board duties, and you're asking that the Police Accountability Board will have subpoena powers and paid investigators and independent review of complaints of police misconduct. Then under membership, the voting board shall consist of a community member from each of the 7 county council districts, with one additional member from Annapolis, and 5 members representing the Anne Arundel NAACP, Caucus of African American Leaders, United Black Clergy, CAST, and CASA. And that there will be non-voting members consisting of representatives from AACPD. What is AACPD?
Well, that's actually the police department on that side.
Okay.
Because there is an advisory capacity.
Okay.
They're in an advisory capacity.
Okay. All right. Okay, I understand that. The HRC, Human Relations Commission, the Black Police Association, and the ACLU. Okay, and then the membership of the PAB will reflect the geographic communities that have the most law enforcement encounters. And then under budget, that the budget for the PAB will include an independent legal counsel. So does that summarize the major asks that you're presenting? Does that summarize your recommendations? If I left something out?
The administrative law judge being vetted before being publicly vetted. And
okay, I see that down there now. Yeah.
Right. The county executives thought that would be problematic, but we've actually come up with the solution of that he would have a pool of judges to pick from that had already been publicly vetted. And that should eliminate, the need to do repetitiveness in the trial.
Let me just take this down.
And if you didn't get it, and you may have said this already, for the voting members, there be no retired or active duty police officers within the voting membership. No retired or active duty police officers.
But isn't that part of the county executive's proposal? I think he's got that in his.
No, he has no active duty police officers. The way it's written, you could appoint 9 retired police officers to that board. So on the voting side of the board, no active duty or retired police officers. We're adding the word retired police officers.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
Because that could be problematic. If you got the wrong, it could be problematic down the road with.
Yeah, I'm just reading your table here about the non-voting members, but right under that paragraph, it says no active duty members of the police force will be included as a voting member. Do you mean non-voting member? As a voting member.
As a voting member. And then on the third column, where we're clarifying, this is what we asked, but this is where we're clarifying it even deeper. No retired or active duty police officers should serve as voting members of the board.
Okay, let me put that down. And I'm going to ask you to send this to me so I make it absolutely certain that I get it correct. We get it correct in the minutes. So there's no retired or active duty officers will serve as voting members.
That is correct.
Okay, is there anything else that I may have missed here?
Well, I'm going to check that against my last slide. Is that okay?
Okay.
Oh, this was a proposed timeline. I don't think you all are familiar with the timeline, right?
Well, yeah, I think folks should be. The county executive has got this on a fast track. He wants all of this to be finished in July.
Yes, that's the law. And actually, we've been asking them for
That's
quite
correct.
some time, what's the status? What's the status? And now
Yeah.
here we are. We all of this is fast track. So thank you for that. So
No,
here's the
here-
last. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go on. Oh, okay, so that's the summary of what you're actually asking for.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And then, oh, I'm sorry.
okay, I would like the commission to look at what's on the screen right now. My only question is that you've got the part of the screen is blocked off because you've got our pictures on it.
You know, I've been doing this for so long. I didn't know that you all couldn't, that wherever I put my marker at was affecting the field. Hold on a second.
Yeah, but I think there's a way of doing that.
It is. I just have to figure it out. There it is.
Well, I think Julian can
There we
help
go.
us with that. Julian?
Yes, I
My,
can.
my class that I teach will be happy to know that. I thought I was like, I didn't know you all could actually see the screen, the you know, the panel
No,
there.
so Margaret, he's actually seeing his own. But Michael, if you go to the top right corner, it says view in your window,
Oh, okay.
and then you
Oh,
go
okay.
side by side gallery. Your
Oh,
face is very good.
okay. So we all
Oh,
have to,
okay.
we all have to do that. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Yeah. So everyone, each person's.
Okay, I see. Let's hit side by side, right?
Yep.
Side by side speaker or side by side gallery? Be side by side gallery?
Yeah. If you want to see everybody there, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We'll eliminate. Okay, there we go. Perfect.
I'm afraid to hit the button, so I'm just going to wait.
I actually should have known that, but at the, okay, what I'd like the commission to do, members of the commission, is we don't have to read through this again. I've taken notes on this, and I'm going to ask Reverend Morris if she would send me just that page, that one page which sums up the recommendations. Could we go back to that, Reverend Morris?
Of course, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like the commission to read through the 7 recommendations that are on your screen. And again, you can you can move the pictures away by going to the little button top right-hand side and hit side-by-side gallery view, and it'll come out really well. We've got to go back. Okay. Just like to give the commission just a couple of minutes just to look over this list. And then I'm going to ask if they have any questions, and then we'll see where the commission wants to go with this. And again, all of these represent recommended changes to what the county executive is proposing.
And all of these things, as you're writing, they are extremely important to the citizens of the county. And in reality, we don't see what harm it would do to implement these. But there can be a lot of harm without it being implemented.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any comments or questions about any of these.
Please, I see that Jeremy.
Okay. Yep. Okay, Commissioner Browning.
Hi, Reverend Morris, thank you for your presentation. To the commission, the Annapolis Pride Board, which I sit on, recently joined the coalition. And once everyone has had a chance to ask questions, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. All right, are there other questions or comments? Questions or comments? Okay, Commissioner Browning, you have a motion you'd like to make to the commission?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that the Human Relations Commission of the City of Annapolis join the Anne Arundel County Coalition for Police Accountability.
Okay, the motion has been made. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, all right, the motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
This is Chuck. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, other comments? Okay, the chair does not hear any opposition to this. Is there any opposition to the motion? If not, the motion is approved by common consent. And Reverend Morris?
Chair, can I jump in real quick? You do actually have to have everyone vote on the motion. You can't really do a motion by common consent. So everyone's gonna have to do a yay or a nay. You could just say if everyone, agrees, say yay, or, any opponents to it say nay, but you do have to have sort of a voice vote, if you will.
Okay. All right, we usually do have things approved by common consent, but since this has been brought to our attention tonight, are you saying that we should just have a voice vote? Would that do it?
Yeah, you can say all in favor, and people can raise their hands or say aye or whatnot, and then you can say anyone who's opposed.
Okay.
You just have to have everyone kind of vote as
Okay.
opposed to a sort of
All right,
silence.
okay, all right, we're gonna take a vote consistent with what our attorney has recommended to us. Only members of the commission vote on this one, only members of the commission. So what I'm going to ask is those, since some of us are on, again, we could do this electronically by using the raise hands function in Zoom, but I think what I'm going to do is just ask folks to take a voice vote on this. Okay, commissioners voting only. Those who support the motion is made by Commissioner Browning. Please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Those abstaining, so indicate. Okay, the minutes shall record that the motion has been approved unanimously, and that the Annapolis Human Relations Commission shall stand in as one of the supporting parties and supporting the coalition's proposals with regard to the Police Accountability Board. Okay, Reverend Morris, I thank you for joining us this evening and making this presentation. I would ask if you could email me just that one slide, that last slide, which shows the recommendations. And I mainly want that because I want to make sure that I capture all of that in the minutes. And so you can definitely add the Annapolis Human Relations Commission to your listing of organizations that's in support of the changes that you are seeking in the Police Accountability Board.
Yes, thank you all so very, very much. It's indeed been a pleasure to be here before you. And I'm going to say God bless you and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Morris. Okay, we're going to move along to the item B. Well, actually, we're gonna jump back up to the earlier part of the meeting, things that we hadn't covered. One will deal with the staff liaison report. Judge Barber, do you have a report you'd like to share with us this evening?
Good evening. I do not have any items to report at this time.
Okay, all right, that's fine. In terms of my report, just two items. First, I would like to express thanks to Julian Jakes, who is handling our technical arrangements via Zoom. So thank you, Julian. I know you are out there, but really appreciate your service in this respect. Second, I'd like to share with the commission the good news that we will be rolling out a new brochure for fair housing. It will be both the English language and a Spanish language version. We needed to substantially update it because the county council enacted some very important changes in terms of how it deals with fair housing issues. Prior, Anne Arundel County did not even have a fair housing ordinance. They didn't have one. But there have been some really substantial changes, and all of those changes are reflected in the new brochure. And I'd specifically like to express thanks to Commissioner Rosemary Kachmar, who provided us with the Spanish language translations for those sections of the brochure that were new. So thank you, Rosemary, for that. Also, I'd like to thank Michelle Stevenson, who is, I believe her title is either community relations or communications or public information officer.
She's
But
the communications officer for the city. Her
Okay.
name is Mitchell Stevens.
Okay, all right, okay. Oh, it's Mitchell. Okay.
Mitchell.
Mitchell, okay. Thank you, Tricia, for pointing out to me. I
You're welcome.
scribbled it down very quickly. She really prettied up the brochure, really did a neat job. She said, I just started to play with it. And it was a great job, and I'd like to thank her for that. And then finally, I'd like to thank Teresa Wellman, who's a housing director, I think, for the city. She works in planning and zoning. And she is going to arrange to get 500 copies of both the English and Spanish versions printed for us. And she said she would take care of the cost and all that good stuff. So I'm very pleased that we're going to have this updated version of our fair housing brochure. It's extremely popular, and it will enable us to actually start distributing it again. It's my understanding as well that, and again, I learned this from Ms. Stevenson, that she did vet the publication with the City Office of Law, and they gave it a clean bill of health, and also the mayor saw it and liked it. So we've got everybody covered for that. Going back to our area for new business, we're going to be we're all on the topic now of the whole issue of the Police Accountability Board. There's issues that are still bounding around about making the city's approach to this thing consistent with what the state has done. And I think that process continues to go on. But there is an advisory panel on what's called the Police Review Board in Annapolis. And we have two members of the commission who serve on that, Commissioners Hurley and Williams. And I would like to ask one or both of them to give us an update of what's happening with that. So Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Hurley, could you share with the commission what's new with that project?
Jay, do you want to go ahead, please? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was somewhat of a, can everyone hear me okay? Sorry about that.
Yes.
In terms of recently or the Civilian Review Board panel had been on hold for several months because of the head of the, I guess the advisory panel, Mr. Rao was out sick for several months, but we had a meeting very recently here, I would say within the last month or so, where we had a presentation that was somewhat going over what the legislation was that was introduced, and also what Reverend Morse was stating as to what was going on in the legislation and what was supposed to take place, or what was happening. So we had gotten somewhat of a rundown as to what that legislation was, and what was at least the comments and concerns regarding the legislation, and what police could be, or the standards for the police, or at least for that Civilian Review Board. And maybe Chuck, you can follow up on what I may have missed out on.
Well, I think it's a good summary. First, I think we're all glad to see Will back and in good health. And most of the discussion was on making sure the city had proper ways to communicate with the county board. But once that's done and the county board is established, presumably pretty soon, I think the focus will return back to what the city should do. And I sent an email to Will. I haven't heard back yet, Jay, but clarifying that our next step would be to focus on the recommended formation of a civilian review board here in Annapolis.
All right, and I think that Chuck and I were communicating and trying to figure out how the new legislation affects the city of Annapolis, because I guess the new legislation somewhat talks about what happens from a county or countywide for Anne Arundel County, but not specifically for like a police accountability board or civilian review board for the city of Annapolis Police, which is a different department than the county, the Anne Arundel County Office of Police or Police Department. So hopefully, soon we'll have more information as to what the different either accountability boards or civilian review boards will be for the city of Annapolis specifically, and hopefully be able to report back after we have additional meetings regarding that advisory panel board.
I can answer that question for you now, if that helps.
Please.
Yeah.
So the police accountability boards, the police accountability boards and the administrative charging committee encompass the city of Annapolis, and by state law, we the city of Annapolis are bound by the administrative charging committee and the police accountability board. So the way that the state law is written is that it says each county will have a police accountability board and each county will have an administrative charging committee. And so any sort of municipalities that fall within that county are still subject to that countywide, if you will, police accountability board. And then the police accountability board they appoint 3 out of the 5 members of the administrative charging committee. So for example, in Anne Arundel County, city of Annapolis, Crofton, Sheriff's Office, and also the Anne Arundel Community College are all subject to the police accountability board and the administrative charging committee that is created by Anne Arundel County. I don't know if that completely answers all your questions, but we are subject to.
Carrie, a follow-up question would be, does that preclude Annapolis having a civilian review board? Does it cover
what the civilian review board would want to do? Because a lot of what the police accountability board and the administrative charging committee does is something that a civilian review board would do. For example, like in Baltimore City, one of the things that wasn't really touched on in the presentation by the Reverend, which is an important part, and part of the reason why it wasn't really touched on is because there hasn't been any legislation that's been drafted by the county yet, but the administrative charging committee has subpoena powers and can tell the law enforcement agency to go back and investigate more. And here's what the parameters of that investigation are. So a lot of what is sort of envisioned by the civilian review boards are going to be completely encompassed by either the police accountability board or the administrative charging committee, depending on what function.
Just to follow up, I mean, if there were a complaint made about an Annapolis city officer with a violent, charging a problem within the city of Annapolis, that would go to the county board rather than the city board?
There wouldn't be a city board. It would have to go to the county. The police, it could either go to the police accountability board or it could go to the police department itself. And then once the police department's done investigating it, it goes to the administrative charging committee. Now, the administrative charging committee has unfettered access to the investigatory file, and they can look at it and say, we want further investigation of this witness officer, or we want you to go back and interview this witness officer and get more information, or we want you to go back and investigate this area a little bit further. Or they can also subpoena anyone. They have subpoena powers. So the city, any complaint made against the city of Annapolis police officer ends up before the Anne Arundel County Administrative Charging Committee. So there's a lot of acronyms to keep up with here, but it is, city of Annapolis is covered by those county boards and committees.
Yeah, see, the General Assembly set the tone for this. When they wrote the law, they specifically said each county must have a police accountability board. And basically, the city of Annapolis is going to be included in this process in some respect, depending on what the legislation ultimately looks like. The proposal from the county executive is that there shall be one representative from the city of Annapolis,
Right.
appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. But as you heard tonight from Reverend Morris, they have a different framework in mind, that there would be one person from each of the county council districts. So ultimately, the county council is going to say it. The community, the county executive has put forward his proposal. It's now in legislative form. And ultimately, county council will work its will. But I would emphasize again that the authority and powers of the Police Accountability Board pretty much set in state law.
No, I wasn't challenging that, Mike. It just that I never saw in state law that it precluded a local civilian review board. It said obviously counties must, but I never saw cities can't.
And
Can you
it doesn't
address
say
that?
that. To clarify, it
Yeah.
doesn't have a preclusion. I think what the sort of conundrum here is a lot of what civilian review boards are covered by that legislation. So you can't really have a parallel running board. I mean, depending on what they're doing, you could potentially have a parallel board, but as it comes to the issuance of discipline, that is fully covered by the state provisions. And then the Police Accountability Board also reviews that discipline and makes recommendations and things like that. So, you could do something that is more of an oversight, but less disciplinary. It's not a straight preclusion, and I want to make that part very clear. It's just a lot of what has
Okay.
sort of been proposed in terms of civilian review boards, or what's currently, being done as a civilian review board in Prince George's County or in Baltimore City, is what the Police Accountability Board or the Administrative Charging Committee is charged with doing.
Okay, thank you.
And one observation that was made at the meeting with the county executive staff is there was an acknowledgement that this legislation has got so many different moving parts in it that inevitably, after a year or two, there's going to be some interest in maybe patching things up or making some changes in the law. However, it was also acknowledged that the General Assembly is not anxious to take this up again anytime soon. They're going to let this thing play out probably for several years, and then come back and legislate some fixes in it. But the feeling on the part of the county executive staff was at that meeting, whatever we adopt as a county council, whatever is the county council adopts is going to be with us for a good period of time. So the county council has the lead on this, and they plus the county executive have to come up with a product that's going to ultimately be logistically workable. Okay, are there any other comments on this? Thank you, Ms. Berger, for offering that analysis. I know there was a lot of questions that were bounding around about what was happening with that, especially with Alderman Savage's legislation. And it's very clear now that we can't have a situation in which there is a conflict, especially jurisdictional conflicts between the city and the county on this. The General Assembly has put this in the power and put this in the hands of the county, and that's where it's going to, I think, be going. And also, you'll recall that the legislation from the county had a number of suggested changes in terms of how the commission will operate. So it's really not even certain that any of that is going to be pertinent for us in the future. Okay, the next item we have on our agenda is a bit of a disturbing item, something we haven't seen here for 10 to 15 years. But these things do come back. That was that there was a hate incident in the city and the county within the last month. I first learned about it from an email message I got from Commissioner Leach, who notified me about it and mentioned that several people who were, I think, part of the congregation at St. Luke's Church brought it to everyone's attention. If you didn't read the story in the Capital had a good story about it. Basically, it involved the distribution of anti-Jewish flyers.
Yes.
Excuse me? Oh, anti-Jewish flyers that were found in at least 2 areas of the county. The flyers were placed inside clear plastic bags and were found by residents in the Anchorage community of the county, as well as along Tyler Avenue in Annapolis.
Janice.
Those of you who have a really long history here will remember we've seen this show before. The same type of things. These particular flyers basically accused people of the Jewish faith as having been responsible for COVID-19, as well as all kinds of other ugly things, and they were simply tossed on the lawn of people's homes and in other places. But I would like to express my thanks to Mayor Buckley and to County Executive Pittman, as well as to Ashley Bauer, who's the president of the Anchorage Community Homeowners Association, for actually speaking out on this and condemning it publicly. It's really important because you hear often people say, well, just ignore them. They're crazy, just ignore them. Pay no attention to them. So the Southern Poverty Law Center will tell you it's a single worst thing you can do. Because if you ignore them, they take that as a sign of silent support and they'll come back. What you want to do is condemn them roundly and make it very clear that they and their material is not welcome in our community. I would make one other point though in this, and that is in dealing with these groups, you have to understand that there's a difference between hate crimes and hate incidents. A hate crime is a crime that has a hate component to it. In other words, if you put swastikas on a synagogue, that is destruction of property. That is a crime that can be prosecuted. A hate incident is of different nature. A hate incident is a case in which individuals involve themselves and express, really nasty kinds of things, but it's covered by the First Amendment protections in the Constitution, both the state and federal constitutions. This particular episode was an example of a hate incident. And it's ironic because, and I can understand why our elected leaders and community peoples, they call the police. The police will dutifully go out and they will issue a report later saying that, this happened. Not more than that, because the police, even if the police saw someone doing this, for the most part, they can't do much about it. It is protected speech under the First Amendment. We do have a protocol arrangement, with the police department. I'm waiting to see if I get a copy of the police report that was written up. We haven't actually had something quite like this happen in the city of Annapolis for about 10 to 12 years. But I remember that when we did have it, there was then Mayor Ellen Moyer held a community meeting, and at that meeting was the city attorney, the police chief, me, and the mayor. And basically, we had it filled City Hall. In terms of the council chambers, and people were really worked up about it, very upset. And it was the same kind of thing. It was just nasty, racist, anti-Semitic types of things. But what ultimately explained to them is what you want to do is, as a community, stand up and say, this is unacceptable. A good example of something that was done years ago, there was something like this happened at Arundel on the Bay. The community held a public bonfire and burned it, burned all their flyers, and invited the Capitol. The Capitol put it on the front page, and that sends a message. The group never came back there. And so people need to speak out. If you come across something like this, the people to contact are the Capitol. Call the newspaper, say this, look what happened here. Let's get some attention to this disgusting behavior. Capitol did in this case. They ran a front page story. And I did tell Helen when she called me about this, or didn't call me, but emailed me about this, that the commission would be happy, and then specifically I would be happy to meet with any community group to talk about how to respond to hate group activity in the community. I think you mentioned one person, Commissioner Leach, who I think was the person who I think was providing information about this particular event. Is there anything that you want to say about it from your vantage point?
Well, I just want to say that the chief of police responded to them. They contacted the chief of police, the mayor, our alderman, and I think that was it. And the only response they got was from the chief of police. And they did have a lot of suggestions of what they could do as a group. And, like contacting the synagogues and telling them, that we have their backs and we're, supporting them in anything they want to do. But so far, they haven't done anything. So this, as far as I know, it was actually the community of Green Acres, but only Janice Drive and Tyler Avenue, not Warren Drive. And then, as you said, the other one was the one that you mentioned, Mike. That was the only other one. So, so far that they haven't done anything, as far as I know.
When you say they haven't done, you're talking about?
They haven't responded in any way except to report it to those 4 people, and the only response they got was from the chief of police.
Yeah, I would just, I would just note again that Mayor Buckley did issue a public statement denouncing it.
Yeah, he did.
And so did the county executive Pittman did as well.
Yeah.
And for the most part, there's not too much more they can do. If there is a hate crime that occurs, for example, there was one that there have been some that have happened in the city of Annapolis where people have actually engaged in destructive behavior. If it's a crime, the police can definitely fully investigate it, and if they find the parties responsible, they can be held in account. But if it's a matter of throwing a bottle on someone's lawn with a nasty flyer inside, it just won't stand up to legal scrutiny. I mean, the courts.
Remember, they said the last time this happened that it is considered littering.
Yeah.
But they can't do really anything about it.
Good luck getting that through the courts.
Right.
I mean, give me an example of how the courts have ruled on this. Give me one case example. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I've had doctoral level work in constitutional law. You'll recall, there was a group called Westboro Baptist Church.
Right.
It was not a church. It was a group of, it was a hateful family. It's a family affair, just a bunch of haters. And they're especially really nasty to, they're extremely homophobic. But they would show up at funerals of military personnel. And they would hold, right when the funeral was going on, they would hold events. They would hold a protest event saying that, this is what the United States gets for catering to gay people. They would actually do that. Well, one state, I forget which one it was either Tennessee or Kentucky. They passed a law saying that these groups, if they wanted to meet, they had to stand X number of yards away from where the funeral was actually being conducted. Okay, sound reasonable? Reached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court overturned the law in an 8-1 decision on First Amendment grounds. So the courts will bend over backwards on First Amendment issues. And I'm just saying that you have to distinguish between a hate incident and a hate crime. If it's a hate crime, then it's up to the police. That's their job. If it's a criminal, if it's an incident, then the citizens of the community need to speak out. And we had that happen here. I applaud all of those individuals who spoke up on this issue. And I will continue to be available to talk to any community group about how to deal with incidents like this. Commissioner Hurley?
Mike, is it in order that I would recommend I move that the commission explicitly condemn this incident, support the Jewish community, and state that hate has no home in Annapolis.
I think is.
I have, yeah.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it, but what, are you going to do it with a letter or what?
I would assume it'd be a statement on the website. Who would we send the letter to? Maybe the Jewish community. I'm open. Whatever you would recommend, Ellen.
Well, I don't know. I did offer Mike's offering to come and talk, but nobody really took me up on it. I think there's only one synagogue in the city where this happened. This just happened in the city, not the county. Yeah. And so that would be the one on Hilltop.
On Hilltop, right? There's one on Hilltop, right?
That was a hate crime because there was desecration.
Right. Oh, yes. That time that happened. Yes.
Yeah.
But didn't we have one community that put a sign in their community saying that we are a hate-free community? Didn't we have somebody do that? And when this was happening before? Not that I think they'll do it, but I was just wondering. I sort of remembered that.
I remember we had proposed that as a commission, and it never got out, too much. I know the administration in the city just didn't want to bring attention to it, and so that's my memory of that particular one. That's quite a long time ago. That goes back many years.
It was a while ago, and I thought it might have been Arundel on the Bay, or
But let me be in conversation with Commissioner Hurley about how we might want to articulate that. I do think it's a good idea that we do this. Okay, is there any other comments about this? If not,
no, but I've always felt that we should proactively address these issues. So I totally agree with whatever we decide to do.
Yeah,
I think we should come out. We need to come out and explain ourselves. Yeah.
Well, one thing for sure is this has been on our list since there was a community meeting about hate groups back in March, or actually at the end of February of the year 2020. And we had talked and actually approved as a commission to hold public hearings in every single ward of the city of Annapolis on whether people had been affected by hate group activity. Well, COVID-19 put that on hold, and it's still on hold simply because of the concerns of spreading the virus. But we're going to bring that back. I mean, that was approved by the commission. We will bring it back. And I think it'll be fresh in people's mind that, this isn't something that just happened years and years and years ago. This is becoming a problem throughout the United States once again. Hate groups of all types are getting very emboldened. And what you have here is just the dangers of these groups spreading their venom around society. So
and
Commissioner
when
Williams.
was this report or this report of the hate incidents made? I know it's recently, but approximately when was it reported?
About 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was several weekends ago.
Mhm. Yeah, it was like
it
2 Sundays ago or 3 Sundays ago it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, it was in the Capitol. Capitol had a front page story on it.
Mhm.
It was a good story too.
Yeah, it
They
was.
did a really good job. Okay, we do have one more thing on the agenda, and that's a report from the Human Relations Commission of Anne Arundel County. And Lakeisha Hatcher is here and has attended our whole meeting. And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
So what we are, the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission, date to be determined, would like to host a critical race theory forum for public discussion and just educational purposes. So more information is, we're just kind of in the logistical planning phase of everything, sending letters out to see who would like to be of attendance. If you would be interested of being either a guest or a speaker on the topic of critical race theory, please, by all means, you're welcome to do so. But I'll give you more information next. We're still kind of just in the planning phase of that.
Let me give you a recommendation of someone who is very knowledgeable on this issue and who spoke to the commission at its last meeting, and that was Stephen Waddy.
I saw that in your notes, and I was so disappointed I missed that.
Yeah, he's got a great PowerPoint slideshow. Very, very knowledgeable on the subject. So I would strongly recommend going to him. He's I think he chairs the political action committee for the Anne Arundel County chapter of the NAACP.
Okay.
But he's really quite good. And I think you'll find that he'll be very responsive to doing that. And he covered the whole issue really, really, really well.
Oh, definitely. I would love to reach out to him.
Yeah.
Thank you for that recommendation.
Sure. Okay, that brings us to the end of our formal agenda.
Mike, could I just add something to Lakeisha's point?
Yeah, sure.
First off, I obviously support that, but you might even want to broaden it some. Simon Ayer now has a bill in the legislature to require the removal of books from Anne Arundel County Public School libraries. And I think the words are divisive, or it's a broad definition of anything that, it's fundraising. It has very little to do with education. It's about fundraising, as does CRT, of course. But they might even want to broaden it a bit so that it would include some of the other variations of this really, unfortunate's a nice word, ill-intended effort to try to raise money at the expense of people's racial fears and anxieties.
Now, who was the group that you just referred, or you?
Senator Simon Ayer, from, I think, Pasadena. Am I right, Mike?
Okay.
But it's a bill that would require parents would enable parents to have books removed from Anne Arundel school libraries that he deemed would be divisive or, other terms, which is a variation on the CRT stuff.
Oh yeah, good point. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, and this stuff isn't really new. I mean, you go back, you'll find lots of examples of it. They try to throw Huckleberry Finn out of libraries, and
To Kill a Mockingbird.
And To Kill a Mockingbird, that's right. Was considered too controversial. So this is just a renewal of this, but there is a trend today that's very much reminiscent in its fervor to what happened during the 1920s, over the whole issue of evolution, the teaching of evolution in schools, which was banned, around the country in many, many places, especially in rural areas, conservative states. But what you have happened is you've got that trend is back today, and you have many books written by prominent African Americans in the country who have written things that are deemed, divisive and hurtful, and it's just like a cover for censorship. But you have to pay attention to it because school boards will and have around the country been tossing books out of libraries.
Anne Arundel County School Board member Corinne Frank had categories of fundraising, including CRT, that celebrating that if you oppose CRT and gave up money, you could reach a certain category of her fundraisers. So I mean, it needs attention.
Mhm. Okay. Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring before the commission this evening? I'd just like to thank everyone for being with us and for your work and your support for the commission. We just wish everyone a good evening, and again thank Julian for his technical support for us this evening. So with that, the commission shall stand adjourned.
Thank you, Mike.